This video is brought to you by PrizePicks. What have you guys been cooking up in my comment section? What hot takes have you left for me to stumble upon? That is the question that we have today. If you want to know how to end up on hot takes, just leave comments on my videos. I go through the videos of the week. I look at the comments, the ones that are interesting, the ones that are saying something, the ones that are making points and making points respectfully. I will look at, and maybe those points end up on the show and I discuss them here. This is my chance to be able to have a dialogue with the people who support me and watch these videos. It's something that I love to do. So if you want to join the fun, make sure you're commenting on the videos throughout the week. We're going to start with DC Cleveland, who says this. We all hope that we can find a QB in 2027. Barry's been a GM for 7 years and still hasn't found a competent QB. Shador and Deshaun are two of the worst QBs in the NFL. Shador throws more interceptions than touchdowns. I think there are a number of super unfair takes I've seen recently about Andrew Berry, and this is definitely one of them. Andrew Berry has been the GM for 7 years, but like we've never asked him to find a quarterback. You know, he inherited Baker Mayfield. The Deshaun thing was his own mess that ownership is taking credit for. And over the last couple of years, the Browns haven't spent more than a third-round pick on the quarterback position. This kind of reminds me about the discourse about Andrew Berry in the draft, about a lot of positions, right? Where the narrative is Andrew Berry can't draft this position. But then you dig into it and you find out that like the highest draft pick he's taken at that position is a 5th-round pick. And then you ask yourself, can he not draft it, or is he just not tried to draft players at premium positions who could fill those roles? You know, we've done this so much throughout the Andrew Berry era, right? Oh, Andrew Berry can't draft linebackers, and then he takes JOK in the 2nd round. Andrew Berry, he can't draft defensive tackles. He takes Mason Graham early in the draft, right? We are going to see what he has with Spencer Fano, right? Which the one position where he has taken somebody in a premium position and it hasn't worked out was Jed Wills, which, you know, Jed Wills, a lot of people thought he was going to be good, not just Andrew Berry, but that didn't end up working out. So maybe with Spencer Fano, we could see a trend in the positive or negative direction here. But for the most part, every time I hear Andrew Berry can't draft these positions, it's usually Andrew Berry can't draft these positions in day 3 of the draft. And nobody drafts reliably good in day 3 of the draft. That's why it's day 3 of the draft, right? Wide receivers, people made the point, Andrew Berry can't draft wide receivers, but people are really happy with these wide receivers already. The problem isn't that the Browns are incapable of finding talent in certain positions. It's that the Browns haven't taken those players early enough to have access to the ones that are actually going to be good. You know, he's not a miracle worker. He's not going to just reliably find the best player in the draft in the 5th round. I think that's what some people really think the GMs should ought to be able to do. But when he's taken guys in the first 2 rounds, those guys have usually worked out more so than other draft picks and other teams. So I don't think Andrew has a inability to find competent quarterback play. The real question has been when are the Browns going to invest in quarterback play? When are they going to make a 3rd investment in quarterback play? That's the bigger question. I don't care how many years a guy has been GM, right? I want to know what they do with their premium picks. I want to know how well they select with those picks, the 1st and 2nd round ones, right? That's how I can really judge a GM. So I think this whole he's been GM 7 years, hasn't found a competent quarterback. It's like, okay, but like, is that his fault? Like, are we going to take the next step and actually have some critical thinking here? Because I do think that we take some critical thinking here, to some critical analysis. It's pretty obvious why that's been the case. You know what I mean? That's just me. Y'all get to the next one. Daryl says this: Gabriel is the disciplined quarterback you keep talking about. If someone is going to hand the ball off a lot, not turn the ball over, maybe he could be the bridge to develop Green into something or draft the guy. Here's the problem with Dylan Gabriel. He does have that mental discipline that I'm talking about, even though when he was out there, something changed his mental discipline, right? You watch Gabriel at Oregon, he's very disciplined. He has that, what we're talking about. But when Gabriel played in the NFL, I don't think that he was as disciplined. And the reason is because he didn't have the tools to be successful in the NFL. He could not throw the ball downfield. That condensed the field on him and completely changed how he processed the game and made him more of a panicky reader of defenses. So that discipline that I saw at Oregon that I liked about Dylan Gabriel, it's not there because he's not talented enough to be able to force defenses to play him straight up. That's Dylan Gabriel's mountain to climb. How does he force teams to play him straight up? Because right now, nobody's playing him straight up because they don't think he can throw downfield. He has not proven that he can throw downfield. And every time that he's tried to prove that he could throw downfield, he's given evidence of the opposite. So until Dylan Gabriel can force defenses to play him straight up, none of that other stuff matters. You know, the reason the discipline matters with Shedeur is at the point to where he can make defenses play him straight up. So if he was more disciplined, he could be much more successful. But you got to get to that point where defenses can't just assume you're not going to throw the ball downfield. Can't just assume that you're going to condense the field on itself, right? That's the big question with Deshaun Watson. Like, is Deshaun Watson going to be at a place physically to where he can force defenses to play him straight up? Dylan Gabriel's issue is that he can't force defenses to play him straight up, which means he ends up having to play this real panicky brand of football that doesn't help him out. So hope that helps understand why, like, yeah, some of those traits do matter. But like Bo Nix, the difference between Bo Nix and Dylan Gabriel is Bo Nix is talented enough to force defenses to play him normal. Dylan Gabriel has not. And that's the difference. Fundamentally, they're not that different quarterbacks. It's just Bo Nix is talented enough to force defenses to play him straight up. Dylan Gabriel, it does not appear that that is there. And that is an important piece to the puzzle. If Dylan can force teams to play him straight up, if he comes out here and he's bombing deep balls and safeties have to like play him normal, he might have a chance to be something in the league. But until that starts to happen for Dylan, I can't get excited about it because that's such a big part of his game that he's missing. We're going to be right back, but first I got to thank my sponsor, PrizePicks. PrizePicks is a fun way to earn cash while you watch your favorite teams. No complex betting rules, just pick more or less on a few player stats and lock in your lineup. Here are my picks for this upcoming season, AFC North edition. Jimmy Bernard, I have less than 475. This has to do with volume available in Pittsburgh's offense. Quincy Judkins, I have over 975. Browns improved line. I think the run game is going to be better with it. Chase Brown, under 900 yards. Joe Burrow equals less rushing yards usually for the Bengals offense. Mark Andrews, more than 475 yards. Lamar's going to need a safety blanket. Check to see if PrizePicks is available in your state. You could follow me on the app at Quinn_C to see all my lineups. Download the PrizePicks app today. Play $5 and get $50 in lineup to download the app using the link in the description. We're back. World War Z with this question says, one thing about 2027 is that exciting and all our extra quality picks. 2 first rounds. Oh, I got to put this shit up. 2 first rounds, 3 fourths should create a lot of options for trading up or back for acquiring key talent. Dante Moore would have gone top 5, got a huge contract, and been 1 year closer to his second contract, which is a huge payday. Just look at the top 5 QBs going into the 2025 season. And where they ended up in the draft. Moore at best gets taken at the same pick a year later. At worst has a poor season and follows the Klubnik Nussmeier model, where they were ranked 1 and 2. Meanwhile, Mendoza was ranked 13th. So I would throw some corrections out there because I don't think Dante Moore is at risk of having what happened to Cade Klubnik and what happened to Nussmeier happen to him. And I think the reason that is because Cade Klubnik and Garrett Nussmeier were people that the media was high on, but the league wasn't, right? When Dante Moore is hearing about going into the draft, he's hearing back that he's going to be a first-round pick. We've heard those reports. When Cade Klubnik tried to dip his toe in the draft the year before last year, he heard back he'd be a day 3 pick. When Garrett Nussmeier tried to dip his toe into the draft the year before last, he heard back he'd be a day 3 pick. The reality on Klubnik and Nussmeier was that they weren't 1 and 2. And the reality on Mendoza, who was ranked 13th, if you talk to scouts and people who were in that world, Mendoza was always close to 1 since the summer, right? I had JP on here, right? JP Acosta, and he was talking about Mendoza being his number 1 quarterback in the summertime last year. Corey Kinnan had him on. He was talking about that being the case. That was not an uncommon opinion within draft world, right? It was an uncommon opinion in like regular sports media world, but if you dug deep into it, Mendoza was always seen as the number 1 guy in that class. He didn't really rise, right? I was talking about Mendoza being the number 1 guy at the beginning of the season. People were like calling me crazy because they didn't know who he was, but then they found out, right? That's not the case for Nussmeier or Klubnik. Klubnik, they were always seen in that world of people who scout as lesser prospects than the public thought of them. Dante Moore does not have that problem. Dante Moore, if he has a bad year, will still be a first-round pick. You know what I mean? He showed enough in the year prior to where he's still going to be a first-round pick. I don't see him falling crazy, even if he has a bad season. I think people will look at what he did his junior year and say, that's enough. You know what I mean? Because it would have been enough to take him top 5 last year. It's probably going to be enough to still justify taking him in the first round, even if he has a bad season. So the phenomenon you're talking about is not really Klubnik and Nussmeier going from being ranked 1 and 2 to falling all the way back. It's the reality that the public was much more high on those prospects than people who scout. And that's what you were seeing manifest itself during the season. Mendoza was never 13th to scouts. Mendoza was always closer to 1 than Cade Klubnik was or than Garrett Nussmeier was. It just wasn't until the season happened that everybody caught up to that. But that's where people were. Dante Moore is number 2 in this class, in that world, and in the public. So even if he has a off year, he's still going to go in the first round. That's just my thoughts on it. But it's a good question to ask, and it's something that does need to be explained. But yeah, the reason he gets that big NIL deal is because the NFL did value him at the first round. The reason Cade Klubnik and Garrett Nussmeier came back to college last year is because the NFL said you're a 3rd-round pick. Well, not even a 3rd-round pick, a day 3 pick. It's different. They were not as the NFL wasn't as high on them as the public was. Matt Lovejoy says this: the team that will silently pick the starter. The team will silently pick the starter. You can't fool the players. They don't settle for starting the guy who doesn't give them the best chance to win. People need to stop worrying about who Todd picks because it's a team decision in the end. Yeah, I get what you're saying. I agree with you that they're going to have to pick the guy who gives them the best chance to win. I just think that opinion is probably going to change throughout the season. You know what I mean? Like, I think during camp, they might think that quarterback X gives them a best chance to win. But then during the season, they watch quarterback X and think quarterback Z gives them the best chance to win. And then at some point, they just understand that they don't really have a quarterback who gives them a great chance to win. Which is how this has played out most of Brown seasons where we're in this situation. I'm hoping for something different this year, but I got to be honest about what's usually on the table here. So, yeah, the team's going to want to pick the guy who gives them the best chance, but I would say what we are underestimating when we frame it like that is the possibility that the team looks at both of these guys and understands that they're both not that good, which has happened a lot before in these situations. Hoping that it's not the case this year. But we got to keep that possibility in mind. It's not just, the team will think this quarterback gives them the best chance to win, or this quarterback gives them the best chance to win. There is also a chance where they just end up in legitimate apathy. You know what I mean? We live this reality every 4 years, right? We're like, I hate both choices when it comes to certain elections. This is not a reality that is foreign to the Cleveland Browns as far as quarterback competitions go, right? There will be some people who really want this guy to succeed. There will be players on the team who really want somebody else to succeed. And there will be a good amount of people who don't care who's starting because they don't see much of a difference between either of them. That's how these things usually break down. Again, I am hoping it's different. I hope we get a landslide in one direction and we're all like, all right, it was Shador, let's roll with it. But it usually ends up kind of like that. You know what I mean? So, yeah. But also, we're forgetting a very important third option there that most people are likely to choose. War Z says Dillon still has a chance. May well be with another team, but his career is not over. Watch the Browns trade him, move to the practice squad. He goes to the practice squad. He could be picked up by another team. No, I don't think Dylan Gabriel's career is over. But I do think for him to be a successful quarterback in the NFL, he has a hurdle that I'm not sure he can get over, which is his physical tool set. He just can't force defenses to play him straight up. Maybe a coach can figure out how to get the most out of him and how to force defenses to do that. But that's going to take a lot of effort. And I don't know where he's going to be in a situation where somebody's willing to put that much effort into him to be successful outside of the team that drafted him. So it's kind of my thoughts there. Last hot take of the day. Phil is not a bot. Appreciate that clarification. Seems like a guy like Verse that pressures through power and has a disadvantage on closing because of the opposing tackle while still getting beat is between him and the quarterback. So while he has to shed the guy to be close, the extra time allows the quarterback to go on a check down, which would just kill the play. A guy like Miles wins by putting the tackle behind him or at least standing next to him so that almost no time to contact once he wins at the point of attack. I think this oversimplifies Miles' game to just being athletic. Miles wins in a number of ways, right? He wins by being able to blow by you. He can win with power at times. He can win with bend and strength. And I think that's why Miles is much better at closing than somebody like Jared Verse. And I remember a time where Miles wasn't as good at closing, and it's because his bag wasn't as deep. I think the problem with Jared Verse and why he can't convert pressures into sacks at a higher rate is because he just doesn't have that deep of a bag. He has a lot of bull rush, and it may be a little bit of a counter off of it, but that's really what he has there. And that means that you could prepare for him. Like, you know how he's going to win. You know where he's going to be if he wins. So if you're a quarterback or if you're an offensive lineman, you can prepare for that. With Myles Garrett, you can't prepare for how he's going to beat you because he can beat you in so many different ways, which means when he does beat you, it's more devastating, right? I think that's ultimately the difference. The bend is also a huge deal. I think JP talked about it, right? One of the best finishers of all time is Von Miller, right? Somebody who just has bend. Now, what Jared Verse can lean on that I've seen guys with his skill set be able to finish better with, and where there is hope for him, is TJ Watt. Because TJ Watt's not super bendy, but what TJ Watt does bring to the table is like really high motor, which Jared Verse also has. And if he can get somebody from the interior like a Mason Graham, and I think this is ultimately the Browns' hope, right? The Browns are basically trying to replace Miles with what the Steelers had with TJ Watt and Cam Hayward, because the magic of that combination was that TJ Watt on his own was not going to get a ton of sacks, but Cam Hayward up the middle, creating consistent pressure, is what allows TJ Watt's motor to turn pressures into sacks because TJ Watt had the same issue. A lot of bull rush, a lot of running straight through people's chests, but not a deep bag, not getting a ton of sacks. Cam Hayward, he shows up in Pittsburgh. All of a sudden that changes because now you're getting that consistent pressure in the middle. Quarterbacks are flushing towards you. That allows your motor to become a huge factor in your finishing. I think that's the pathway for Jared Verse. He's not going to be able to win with the frequency and the unpredictability that Miles is going to be able to win with, that created his elite finishing ability on top of like Miles's elite bend, ankle flexibility, and athletic ability. But what Jared Verse can have is like that motor, and Mason Graham's motor, they're hoping that's Cam Hayward, TJ Watt. And to be fair, that combination did almost break the sack record. So I think that's what's in Andrew Berry's head when he makes this trade. Will he be right? Time will tell. I hope he is. I hope he cooked. I always hope he cooked because that'd be good for the Browns. But that's the plan. You can think of it what you think, but I'm just telling you what the plan is. Please don't shoot the messenger. You feel me? But that's it for hot takes. Want to thank you guys for asking these hot takes. Make sure you guys stay engaged, stay commenting. It's the lifeblood of this channel. Appreciate you guys 100%. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.